Hello, hello. Welcome back to another section of Three More Words by Ashley Rhodes Corder. Great to be back. Happy New Year. Happy 2024. Wishing you all a very happy, healthy new year full of good books and good people and all that. Great to have you here. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'm Julie. I read books over here in this little corner of YouTube for over 3 years now. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, and you can catch the rest of this book that we've started a few sections ago. You can go back and catch up, and I'm sure 2024 will be full of really good books for us over here. But today we are going to continue where we left off last time on page 94. We're in the middle of chapter 7, which was titled Divorcing My Mother. So we just had a really tough scene with her birth mother, Lorraine, and we will see what happens next. Page 94 in the middle of the page with the page break. Let's go. We all crammed into Wes's quad cab pickup truck. Everyone was in a sour mood except for Jasper and Wes. Did you know Dale's going to drive the number 3 Chevy painted blue and yellow like his father's car? Jasper blurted. Wes grinned. Right. The Daytona International Speedway lit up the night sky. Seeing the huge grin on Jasper's face, I was glad we had stayed. Lorraine handed me 4 tickets. You guys are sitting together, and Wes and I will be in the VIP section. Autumn protested. I want to sit with you, Mommy. Lorraine gave her $20. Here's something for the popcorn and sodas. She turned to me. Text me if there are any problems. When the race is over, meet us at this entrance. Wes tugged her hand. Come on, woman. Without another word, they were off, leaving us with the 2 kids. Now I get it, I said to Eric. She only invited us to babysit so she could party. Did you see that? Jasper said. His mouth stayed open. A woman loaded with pirate beads flashed a guy sitting below her. That's inappropriate, I said, pushing his head in the other direction. Not going to kill him to see some boobs. Eric winked. Chill, babe. Let's have some fun. We had to climb to the nosebleed section to get to our seats. From that vantage, the cars going around the track were hardly more than a blur. Look! Jasper shouted. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s car had pulled up close to the stands. He jumped out, took off his helmet, and waved to the crowd. Jasper jumped on his seat and yelled, 88! 88! He pumped his arms in the air and joined the crowd, chanting, Dale! Dale! The kid was so happy. I wasn't going to begrudge him this evening. I don't think I have enough testosterone to appreciate any of this, I said after half an hour of the same cars going around the same track. For a moment, I thought about how much Luke would have loved and wondered if Lorraine had thought of including him in the weekend. I stood up. What can I get you guys? I volunteered to do the fetching as a break from the screaming people and screeching engines. Popcorn, Coke, and a hot dog and candy, Autumn said. I put out my hand for the 20 her mother had given her. For a second, she pretended not to know what I wanted. As I walked away to get snacks, I continued to fume about Lorraine's defense of Autumn and lack of respect for me. When I got back, the race was temporarily stopped. This is boring, Autumn complained. She was fading and getting cranky. I rooted for Earnhardt, who led in many of the laps. Finally, he did win. While the guys cheered, I gathered up our possessions and held Autumn's limp hand so she wouldn't fall down the bleachers. More than half the speedway had emptied out by the time we slithered through the crowds. Nobody was at the meeting point, and Lorraine didn't answer our texts or calls. A security guard said, We're closing the gate. You have to go outside. We're supposed to meet someone from the VIP section, I explained. Where's that? He pointed toward the track. They're all gone. An hour later, Autumn was sobbing from exhaustion. Let's call a taxi, Eric said. Suddenly, Lorraine yelled from inside the fence. Where the hell have you kids been? I told you that's where we said we'd meet them, Wes told her. Sorry, guys, this one managed to sneak into the pit and the guard wouldn't let me go in to drag her out. You shouldn't have followed me in the first place, she shot back. It was clear to me, and probably everybody else, that she was intoxicated. Cut the bull, Wes said. I'm here all the time, and you insulting my friends and jumping security makes me look bad. We followed them back to his truck. Even though we were practically the last to leave, we were still stuck in a long line of traffic. Both kids fell asleep before we reached the house, despite all the name-calling and yelling from Wes and Lorraine in the front seat. Eric sleepwalked Jasper to our room and took off his shoes. I made up a bed for him on the floor of our room instead of the sofa so he wouldn't be in the middle of their fight, which continued, non-stop, for hours. Because of all the shouting and slamming doors, I slept fitfully. Around 7, I woke Eric. Let's just get out of here. We can have breakfast on the road. While I packed, Eric helped Jasper get going. Wes was sitting at the kitchen counter, sipping a mug of coffee. You leaving? Yes, thanks for everything, I muttered awkwardly. Is that an apology for all the trouble you caused? I sucked in a breath. I'll call Lorraine to say goodbye later. Oh, she and the kid are long gone, he grunted at my surprise. She doesn't want to have anything more to do with you than you want to do with her. He ran his fingers through his thick black hair. I don't know why either of you bother. Lorraine thinks you are the biggest stuck-up piece of crap, and you hate her guts for what she supposedly did to you and your brother. None of it was her fault. The state took you away and wouldn't give you back. He poured a swig of bourbon into his coffee and took a gulp. I knew your mother way back when. She went through hell with that crazy daddy of hers, and finally her mother dumped all those kids at that orphanage. Just when she was getting back with her family, her mama died. Your grandma wasn't much more than 30. And then you came along 9 months later. Nobody gave your mother a nickel to help care for you, but she struggled for years to try to get you back. And what do? You not only throw it in her face every chance you get, you go out of your way to be mean to your little sister who worships you. Eric had come back inside to find out what was taking me so long, and heard Wes spewing out more ugliness. Let's go, Eric said with a squeeze on my elbow. I followed him without another word to Wes. I was mute for almost an hour in the car as my mind swirled with the retorts I should have said. When Jasper had dozed off, I finally spoke. That's it. I'm done. Eric nodded. I know. No more chances. No more visits. She's nothing to me. You're right. We drove on in silence for another half an hour. Crystal River isn't too far out of the way, is it? No. Do you mind if we go there for the 4th? Of course not. Jasper can see the fireworks on our river. I exhaled. I just need to go home. That's the end of chapter 7. Chapter 8, page 99, the hungry hormone. You have to give the world the thing that you want the most in order to fix the broken parts inside you. That's a quote from Eve Ensler. I had hidden my wedding pictures. They were concrete proof that I was overweight. At least Eric loved me for my true self and wasn't hung up on some perfect female image. I promised myself I would go on a strict diet after the wedding. Eric agreed to help me make healthier eating choices. Trying to figure out why I couldn't control how much I ate, I thought about my relationship with food before and after my adoption. In foster care, I was anxious about where my next meal was coming from, and sometimes food was withheld as a punishment. Cheap, canned, boxed, or prepackaged meals were the staples of our diet, so fast food was used as a reward. In group homes, we had limited time to eat, so I would cram as much as I could in case I would be hungry later. I mounded large portions of potatoes and other starchy foods on my plate, rarely choosing salad or fresh fruit. There were never snacks or ways to acquire my own food. The first time in my life I had free access to food was at the quarters home. On one of my early visits, I had pointed to the fruit on the kitchen counter. What are the rules about eating that? You can have fruit any time you want, Phil had said. He showed me a bowl of nuts in their shells. You can have nuts, too. I picked up a walnut and twirled it in my hand. I had never seen anything besides a shelled peanut. Phil cracked one open for me. I tried it, but The taste made my tongue curl. I spit it into my hand. Gay handed me a tissue and a banana. Everyone likes these. The skin on the outside was mottled. No thanks. I'll try to get some that aren't quite as ripe, Gay said. I soon discovered that the quarters had food everywhere. The main refrigerator was stocked with fresh milk, orange and grapefruit juice, homemade iced tea, apple cider, and lemonade. A food pantry held mac and cheese, spaghetti and sauces, canned veggies and fruits, peanut butter, and several flavors of jelly. One shelf was loaded with crackers, cookies, pretzels, and chips, even 3 flavors of chewing gum. They kept a supply of fruit juices, cans of salmon, tuna, and sardines, cake, brownie, muffin, and bread mixes. They had an extra refrigerator in the laundry room for cold beverages and fresh vegetables. The 2 freezers contained frozen vegetables, meats, and homemade soups and casseroles and several flavors of ice cream, with chocolate and butterscotch toppings in the fridge. Another cabinet was filled with cereals, coffees, and teas. The kitchen looked as industrial as the one in the children's home, all stainless steel and granite, with a gas cooktop that whooshed out scary tongues of flame. Pots hung like Spanish moss from the rack over the sink, and a clutter of gadgets dangled from hooks on the walls, along with a magnetic strip that displayed sharp knives. I made a mental note to make certain these were hidden when Luke visited. Best of all, the kitchen was just down the hall from my bedroom, so I could help myself anytime I wanted. I knew certain snacks were only put out for picnics and visitors, but I couldn't help myself. When I craved potato chips, I devoured the whole bag. Fortunately, nobody noticed they were missing. When most people think of hunger, they imagine starving children in developing countries. It's true that each year 2.6 million children die of hunger-related causes, but far more are food insecure, a term that defines how I had felt until well after I was adopted. Some of my first memories are about wandering through a trailer park, begging neighbors to fill Luke's bottle and give me a cookie. For the next 9 years, the idea of food shimmered in the back of my mind, and I often became distracted by cravings that would never be fulfilled. I salivated at commercials for fast food and decided that I would eat at Wendy's or Pizza Hut every day when I grew up. At the children's home, good behavior was rewarded with ice cream or pizza. Now I realized that one of the most insidious results of my time in foster care was a lifelong struggle to separate my moods from foods. I've been told that heavier people lack self-control, that they are lazy, indulgent, sedentary, and make unhealthy choices. Although Gay never said any of those things, and she tried to make me feel food secure in her home, we squared off almost from day one as I tested her willingness to let me eat anything I wanted versus her ideas of a balanced diet. Children who don't feel safe have trouble eating. The universal comfort food for American foster children is Kraft mac and cheese, and only that brand in the blue box with the neon yellow cheese, because no matter where you are, it tastes exactly the same. I'd learned to make mac and cheese in another foster home and asked Gay if she would keep some on hand in case I didn't like what she cooked. Once, I rejected meatloaf and made myself 2 boxes. When it was ready, I stood at the counter eating it from the pot. Ashley, serve some onto a plate and join us at the table. I went back 3 times and ate it all. As we cleaned up, Gay said, 2 boxes have far too many calories. Phil shrugged. She'll learn to self-regulate. Gay lectured me on nutrition to the point of disgust. You need protein in the morning to keep your blood sugar stable, she said, then drew a chart showing the difference between having eggs and milk versus a Pop-Tart and OJ. Girls need extra calcium to prepare their bodies for having children and becoming older, she said, pushing yogurt. When I came home from school, I was usually famished. She put out carrot sticks and celery along with little squares of cheese and fresh fruit. She also urged me to take lima bean-size vitamins. She baked chicken nuggets in wheat germ and tried to convince me it was good as KFC. I, on the other hand, pranced around chomping on chips to see how Gay would react. Some days she would do her best to ignore me, but other times, like when I asked Phil to make me 5 grilled cheese sandwiches, she would explode. I don't think she should ever again worry what she that she won't get enough to eat, Phil insisted. She can have as much good food as she wants, Gay replied. Her body doesn't need junk that will expand her fat cells and ruin her figure. Would you rather she be anorexic? No, I want her to have a positive body image and a sensible diet. She's not overweight, Phil pointed out. Not yet, Gay said ominously. My brothers jumped on Gay for allowing me to eat foods that had been forbidden when they lived there. You have sodas in the house? Blake exclaimed one day shortly after I was adopted at the age of 12. Ashley is limited to one a day. We were limited to one every holiday, he replied. Josh found Fruity Pebbles and Cap'n Crunch in the cabinet. Ash, this crap is sheer poison, he said. Read the label. The second ingredient is sugar. And check out the list of toxic chemicals and artificial coloring. And since when are you buying junk bread? Blake tossed a package of plain white bread to Gay. We are slowly introducing Ashley to better decisions. I reluctantly tasted a few new foods and found I liked broccoli with cheese sauce, cauliflower with cheese sauce, and creamed spinach. But no matter how much food was available, my hunger was like an itch that couldn't be scratched. I had to feed the beast that roared through my gut, demanding mounds of buttery mashed potatoes, multiple packages of ramen noodles, white no-crust bread slathered with peanut butter and grape jelly, a stack of warm brownies, blueberry muffins melting with butter, bagels and cream cheese, a slab of crispy bacon, a bag of pretzels with spears of sour pickles on the side. Take me to a buffet restaurant, and I would fill 2 plates for the first round, one piled high with yeast rolls, and the second with every carb offered. Of course, I couldn't eat it all, but I had to have it. Had to. Even when I felt bloated and ill, I still wanted something else, although I couldn't have articulated what it was. At the same time, the more apprehensive I felt about getting perfect grades or how my friends felt about me or when the quarters might reject me, the more active I needed to be. I begged Phil to jump on the trampoline or play volleyball with me in the pool. I skated and biked with the neighborhood friends. I had played softball in Tampa while I was at the children's home, and I joined a Crystal River team after I moved. I even took a scuba course at the dive shop directly across the bay from our house. We had to adopt a girl to get a jock, Phil said with pride, since neither of their sons had shown much interest in sports. My freshman year of high school, I was recruited to play varsity basketball as a point guard because I was considered an extremely tough and energetic player. I had played basketball and won many medals running track in middle school. I had a sport for every season, and no matter how many calories I consumed at the dinner table or in secret, I never actually put on too much weight. Early in my freshman year of high school, I was having severe knee pains, and the orthopedist diagnosed Osgood-Schlatter disease, which causes a throbbing lump below the kneecap that occurs mostly in kids and teens, especially those who are in sports. The doctor told me to modify my training routine. No laps or squats. You can warm up on a stationary bike. Your doctor is not going to dictate my program, the basketball coach said, and I was relegated to the bench. I ultimately traded varsity sports for drama club. In a few months, I needed a larger size of jeans. I stayed active, but it was nothing like conditioning for sports. In college, I kept weight off with my brief stint playing rugby until I required knee surgery. After that, I was more cautious. Then I was helping coach some new players. I was explaining a tackling drill, but the girls weren't getting it. Here, let me show you what I mean. I dove at one of the players. My knee rotated in the wrong direction, and I collapsed in agony. I had torn my knee graft and was faced with having another complex surgery. After considering all my options, my doctor agreed that I could go without another operation only if I retired from sports. Without thinking about it, I had maintained a weight of around 135 pounds during high school. I'm just over 5 feet 6 inches with a large but proportioned frame. After my knee injury, I gained the freshman 15 and then some. One visit home during college Gay had looked me up and down. Ashley, what do you weigh? Phil glared at her. She stared at my feet. Your poor ankles are swollen and your face is bloated. I went upstairs and pulled out my rarely used scale. I weighed 175 pounds, by far the most ever. The next weekend, Eric came for Sunday dinner. I took my usual huge helping of mashed potatoes and a big chunk of brisket. Gay reached over and scooped most of the potatoes back in the bowl. That's a proper serving size. I was mortified. She had done this in front of Eric, but she was unfazed. Ash, I also would stop you if you were taking drugs or drinking excessively. Obesity leads to diabetes and numerous health problems. Gay, this is not, Phil began. I may have been out of line taking food off your plate, but it was my protective instinct. Let's stop pretending that you don't have a problem. So, what do you want me to do? Go see Doc. Maybe he'll figure out why you are packing on the pounds. Dr. Rollins looked at his chart, then at me, and back at his chart, with my weight of 181 pounds recorded and circled. Honestly, Ashley, I didn't recognize you when you came in. What's been going on? Your blood pressure is high, especially for someone your age. Are you ever short of breath? I had trouble hiking recently, I admitted. We're always concerned when someone either gains or loses weight rapidly, he says. So we're going to run some tests. A few days later, he asked me to return for the results. Bring someone with you, if you are comfortable doing so, he said. A few hours later, Gay and I were sitting in Dr. Rollins' examining room. Ashley, your cortisol levels are through the roof, he said. That's the stress hormone. Elevated levels can cause rapid, unexplained weight gain, moodiness, irritability, or depression. What causes it? I asked. It's a malfunction in either the pituitary or adrenal glands, he said. We have to eliminate more worrisome causes like tumors, but those are rare. I almost hoped I had a disease that could be cured and then my weight would melt away. But when I returned after more testing, Dr. Rollins, in his gentle, heartfelt way, said, You don't have anything serious, but you do have the first signs of metabolic syndrome. I see it all the time in people 30 years older than you. He tried to educate me about my body mass index. That's so over. And scare me with statistics about diabetes and heart disease. I knew he was right, just like Gay had been, but how was I going to lose 40 or 50 pounds? Gay offered to pay for Weight Watchers and a gym membership. I lost 7 pounds. I crowed to her after the first week. I stocked up on raw veggies and melons and started counting points. I spent 2 hours a day at the gym. I was hungry all the time, and I also ached all over. But I lost almost 20 pounds. My friends, who hadn't seen me all summer, definitely noticed. I appreciated the compliments, but it also made me self-conscious because I hadn't really realized I'd looked fat to them before. At the moment I stopped exercising daily and went back to cafeteria food, I gained again. A friend suggested a weight loss clinic to help jumpstart the diet again. Not only did the appetite suppressant they prescribed for me cause my heart to race and my face to burn in the sun, I felt so agitated that it wasn't worth the few pounds I lost. The plan was also expensive, and I found it hard to fit weekly injections and doctor visits into my work, travel, and school schedule. I couldn't avoid Gay's birthday party the first week of October, and I knew she would notice I had gained back my summer losses. Later that evening, she said, I found this article. It's about foster children who exhibit higher rates of atypical neuroendocrine and have problems with weight control. You mean gaining weight isn't completely my fault? Was my first comment as I scanned the words Gay had highlighted. Childhood abuse or neglect could take a lasting toll on physical health, may trigger long-term hormone problems that increase the risk of obesity, places stress on the endocrine system, leading to impairment of important hormones that can contribute to abdominal obesity. So, no matter how much I diet or exercise, I'm doomed. I paused to consider my predicament. Dieting will still work, Kay said. It will just be harder for you. There must be another way. Maybe I need my hormones recalibrated or something. I don't want dieting to consume my life. You're not the only one looking for the magic pill, Gay said. At least this gives you more information. Here is the recipe for surefire weight gain. Travel for work. After graduating college, 3 little words had become a bestseller, and I was in high demand for speeches. That meant quick airport food or expensive room service. A late arrival reduced me to peanuts, candy, and a soda from the minibar. Then there were the embarrassing moments. The person with whom I had made arrangements for a speaking engagement greeted me at the airport. "Are you Ashley?" she asked in a voice that sounded disappointed. I nodded. "You look very different from your poster," she said before realizing her gaffe. I tried to divert attention away from my body with large flowers pinned in my hair and baby doll dresses. More than one person asked when the baby was due. Humiliation suffused me. My bookings were getting further apart, and I wondered if my looks had anything to do with it. My size had begun to rule my life and now threatened my livelihood. In this society, weight is the elephant in the room. The great bulk that tips the scale, thus you plunge to the bottom, while the light weights float to the top. If it was true that my metabolism had been altered when my mother fed me to the wolves in the foster forest, how could I dial it back? We'd like you to consider being an ambassador for our International Women's Empowerment Campaign, said a woman who identified herself as a public relations executive for Levi's. I read your book, she continued in a chirpy voice. It's so compelling and inspiring. We're selecting young women who are leaders in nonprofit, fashion, and youth advocacy. Obviously, you would represent the latter group. A few weeks later, I was in Chicago meeting with the firm and the other ambassadors, all of whom were slender to skinny women. Worse, we had to be fitted for jeans, which we would wear when representing the company. While I squeezed my now 240 pounds into one of only 2 pairs of jeans in the entire store that I could zip up, the other ladies fussed about which of the many styles accentuated their perky butts or non-existent hips. The executives tried to make me feel better, saying that Levi's is for everyone's shape. Still, I was mortified. I attended the TED Women conference, where I felt like a whale next to my tiny and trendy teammates, most conspicuously on camera or during interviews. One of my responsibilities was to produce a short weekly video update for viewers and fans. Now, to my horror, cyberspace is filled with video evidence of me at my chunkiest. I just hoped that people would see beyond my size and listen to my social action message. Yes. Still, I was miserable. On the way back from the conference, I caught a magazine headline. "Is your weight over?" juxtaposed with a luscious fudge cake. I hated the way the media messed with women's psyches by stimulating their yearning for a high-calorie fix while simultaneously dangling a remedy for the consequences. This time, I was far more interested in a permanent solution than a sugar hit. I bought the magazine to read the article on the plane. After years of trying every diet, the writer had had lap band surgery and lost 100 pounds, and even her diabetes was reversed. I had heard about gastric bypass surgery, which is a permanent choice. It reduces the stomach size to a tiny pouch, which makes it uncomfortable to overeat, and then reattaches that pouch to an area where food isn't absorbed as easily. Since Eric and I were planning to have children, I worried that this might not be a safe option for a pregnancy. And I had also heard about the many people who overeat and stretch their pouch back out, leaving them right back where they started. The band, I read, is a different procedure. It cinches the stomach like a belt, creating a small pouch limiting the flow of food from the larger section of the stomach above the band to the larger section below. one can have the band loosened or tightened in a quick in-office procedure, and the surgery is completely reversible. Driving home from the airport, I saw a billboard with before and after shots of an overweight, then slender woman. Again, the words lap band jumped out at me. In the next weeks, I caught references to lap band in a doctor's office, in a full-page newspaper ad, and on television talk shows. I handed my new husband, Eric, a brochure. What do you think of this? It seems a little drastic. You don't want to have a risky surgery. If I lose 100 pounds, my risk of death goes down 50%. Eric's face scrunched into a doubtful expression. Death from what? All the complications from being obese. I think you need to get a lot more information. I started researching the surgery and joined an online support group. The more I heard, the more I thought that this could be a good solution for me. I believed that my cortisol levels were driving my hunger. When I had been deprived of food as a child, I became panicky, and that sensation had never left my body. With this surgery, overeating wouldn't be an option, and it would be physically impossible for me to ingest as much as I craved. The cost, though, was prohibitive, and my insurance did not cover it. I had to set the idea aside. Only a few weeks later, an ad in the newspaper caught my eye. Hey, look at this, I called to Eric. It's a contest for free lap band surgery. What would you have to do? I chuckled. Write an essay. There was a bit more to it. I had to attend an information seminar and then medically qualify with a certain BMI and have various comorbidities. My BMI was almost 40, with high blood pressure, shortness of breath, and swollen feet and ankles. The meeting room was filled with men and women who weighed much more than me. As they talked, I realized that, like them, I also had started limiting my social life, steered clear of mirrors and cameras, and avoided my family because I either expected their criticism or saw it in their expressions. Dr. Tiffany Jesse, the bariatric surgeon sponsoring the contest, asked the group, "How much can you eat at one sitting?" 5 burgers and half a pie, said a woman in a pink caftan. I usually eat the whole pie, a man who straddled 2 seats added. To myself, I admitted that I could down 2 burgers, 2 foot-long sandwiches, or 3 packs of ramen noodles. This is all about taking control, the doctor said, and went on to describe that they would select 6 winning essays, 3 by men and 3 by women. The finalists would be featured online, and then 2 winners would be chosen through social media votes. As I'd hoped, my essay won me a spot as a finalist. I asked Gay if she would come when I was photographed for the webpage and had a medical checkup. We had to watch a video about the procedure. I saw her flinch as the video spelled out the complications. Mortality rate, 1 in 2,000. Band slipping or eroding into the stomach, mechanical malfunction, infection, bleeding, pain. When the video ended, Gay said, "There are some scary complications, and you'll have to change your eating style forever." I'll do what I have to do. The nurse answered Gay's barrage of questions about traveling, problems while in another city, and having a baby. We loosened the band during pregnancy, the nurse said to that question, and tightened it afterward. In the elevator, I turned to Gay. Doesn't it sound like the right solution for me? Gay waited a long beat. Her penetrating stare put me on edge. I wouldn't do it. I gasped. I felt like I was falling off the cliff I had spent weeks climbing. You're always hassling me about my weight, and now that I'm willing to do something, you reject it. This option isn't even remotely as dangerous or complicated as other types of surgeries. Ash, Gay said gently, I didn't say you shouldn't do it. I just said that I wouldn't. All those side effects, well, I couldn't tolerate them. It's your decision, because you are the one who will have to live with the result. I stopped short in the parking lot just as a car was coming too fast toward us. Gay pulled me back. So, it's okay if I have the surgery? I asked. First, you don't need my permission or my approval, and I don't want to give either. because I don't want to take the responsibility if this doesn't work. But Ash, I will support you completely and help you in any way I can. Will you ask people to vote for me online? Of course I will. I did not win the contest. You can't win everything, Eric said. Some of our friends refused to vote for me, I fumed. One of Eric's former band members said that if I just had more willpower, I could lose the weight without expensive surgery. He probably voted for you anyway. Eric always believed the best of everybody, while I was more cynical. Maybe we can figure out a way to pay for it in a few years. Don't worry. I love you just the way you are. Just after our first wedding anniversary, Dr. Jessie called. I think there is a way I can do your surgery, she said. She explained that she was using a new operative procedure and it was going to be filmed for educational purposes. I need a patient who won't mind being on camera. I would be responsible for some of the hospital expenses, but not her fee, the band itself, or the aftercare. The amount was now manageable, and so I agreed. On the day of the surgery, one of the nurses prepping me said, "You are so smart to do this when you're 25, instead of waiting until you get debilitated by your weight." I smiled at the slender woman who looked stylish even in her scrubs. "What do you think of Dr. Jessie?" "Don't worry, hon, she's the best." The nurse winked. "She did mine." My recovery was remarkably smooth, and I had far less pain than I had expected. 3 weeks after the surgery, Eric went with me to a conference in Nevada. "Are you up for a hike?" he asked, and was surprised that I agreed. Physically, I was healing quickly. What took longer was adapting to a whole new approach toward food. Eating too much too quickly would cause me to vomit or experience a lump or pain in my chest. This would have been unpleasant in itself, but excess vomiting can also cause the band to slip, requiring a surgical repair. This further inspired me to chew food more carefully and eat slowly so my meals could settle. It takes about 20 minutes from the time you start eating for the brain to signal your body that you are full. Just being forced to slow down resulted in my consuming less. I also learned what foods I could tolerate. At an airport, I grabbed my usual fast food burger while running to a tight connection. I didn't give a second thought to my band, and after a few bites, I was terribly uncomfortable for the rest of the flight. I ultimately wasted most of the overpriced sandwich. A few weeks later, Eric was joining me for a speech in Italy, and I told the doctor about my worries about the long flight and the tempting food. She loosened my band to make sure I didn't have any problems overseas. Band adjustments are a painless office procedure where saline is either added or withdrawn from the band through a permanent port just under the skin in my belly. When I returned from our trip, I had the band tightened again. "Everyone goes through a series of fills and extractions," the nurse said. "Eventually, we'll find your sweet spot. That's the point where you are consistently losing weight while feeling satisfied when you eat." When I figured out how often I had to eat and the right portion size, food was no longer the most important item on my plate. I didn't have to think about what I could and couldn't eat. I wasn't deprived, and I barely missed the huge pasta dishes or heavy breads I'd once craved. At my mid-year checkup, Dr. Jessie's staff was complimentary. "Look at you, girl," the receptionist said. She pointed to the scale. I closed my eyes. "You're down almost 50 pounds. I was more than halfway to my goal, and it had been so easy. I was confident that the surgery had been the right choice for me. That's the end of chapter 8. All right, a little bit at chapter 9 here, page 117, all about Albert. "Nothing you do for children is ever wasted." That's a quote from Garrison Keillor. The events that unfolded during the Daytona trip still bothered me. I felt terrible that Jasper was exposed to an explosive environment. "Jasper was so humiliated by that caseworker," Eric said. "How can we prevent any more problems like that?" Right now, Jasper and Penelope are placed under kinship care status, which is basically foster care with a relative, I explained. All the same rules can apply. But in this instance, I felt like we were being punished because the caseworker didn't see him on time that month. The rules are absurd. Eric was furious. He's my relative. We are volunteers with the Guardian ad litem program. We already had a background check and have been fingerprinted. What more do they want? If we had a foster care license, we could travel with them more often, more easily. And if something happened to your Aunt Liz, we could take over. Maybe we should get licensed. The foster classes are free, and it would give me another perspective for my studies and work. In a few months, I would begin a Master's of Social Work program through the University of Southern California's Virtual Academic Center, attending live class in real time, interacting with the professors and students, and having supervised field instruction in my community. I could still take classes when I traveled by logging on from my laptop anywhere in the world, which was essential with my schedule. No local universities offered the same academic rigor and flexibility. Will you have time? Eric asked. It's only one evening a week, and the foster classes end before my semester starts. Besides, it's not as if we're going to become full-time foster parents. More than 30 people crowded into the orientation session. I am thrilled to see so many of you stepping up to the plate to become foster parents in Pinellas County, said Annabelle, the leader. This marks our first class in a new era where foster parents will team with birth parents to protect their children and enable faster reunification. There was a buzz in the room. I wondered whether Luke and I might have been able to live with Lorraine again if she had one of my better foster families helping her. Feel free to go if this isn't the right fit for your family, Annabelle said. 2 couples left the room. A few hands shot up. What if we don't want to have anything to do with the parents who hurt the children in our care? Asked a Latina woman with hoop earrings. You will have our full support to determine the family's strengths and needs. A woman in a suit and chunky heels stood up. How soon after we get a baby could we adopt him or her? Foster care is not a path to adoption, the speaker said. If that's your goal, then this isn't the right place for you. But I heard, can foster parenting lead to adoption? Yes. Do we get babies? Tons of them. Particularly right now with the pill mill crisis. Another hand shot up in the audience. What's a pill mill? A gentleman wearing a bow tie asked. Some irresponsible doctors prescribe and sell narcotics from semi-illegal clinics. Right now, we have an epidemic of addicted parents. More and more babies are born with drugs in their systems, and they go straight from the hospital into foster care. She sighed. In our area, we have more babies than foster homes who will accept them. However, the vast majority are either going back to rehabilitated parents or their relatives. In the rare cases when a child has nobody or the parent does not complete a case plan, adoption is considered, and the foster parents have the right of first refusal. But if you go into foster parenting hoping to adopt every child, your heart will be broken many times over. Only 6 couples and 2 single women returned for the first official class. We were given a thick packet of forms to fill out at home. The approval process is tiresome, Annabelle said. I'm sure you've read the headlines about bad foster homes, but we do everything possible to prevent this. Eric whispered to me, wait till she finds out that you were the child in some of those headlines. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the approval process, let me tell you about some current situations and see if you can wrap your minds around how you might help. The group was riveted as Annabelle gave an example. 2 days ago, we had a 6-month-old baby come into care when the mother was arrested after a traffic accident. The baby was lying across the front seat in a filthy diaper. She had a blanket, pacifier, and nothing else, not even a bottle. The impaired mother had driven through a park and was stopped by a light pole. Annabelle made a passionate plea. While there is always a huge need to house older kids, chiefly our teens, we are looking for families to consider taking care of babies and toddlers during this crisis until a possible relative can be found. We also need respite homes in case the regular foster parents have an emergency or go on vacation. Brian, a tall, lanky guy who looked to be about the same age as Eric, said, "That's definitely something we can do." His wife, Beth, who had a beatific smile, nodded. Annabelle pumped her fist. "Great! We'll talk more about the details next week." On the way home, I said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" We'd been together for so many years that we were already finishing each other's sentences. "That we could do babies on a temporary basis too?" Eric asked. "Neither of us has 9-to-5 schedules. Besides, it would be good practice." "Are you really up for diapers and barf?" he asked. "Can't be worse than cleaning up after the pets." We had 3 dogs, a cat, and a fish tank, and all required scooping, mopping, and scrubbing. Plus, we had just bought our first house and had extra bedrooms. We could put a crib in the smaller upstairs bedroom, Eric said. He had a grin on his face that made me want to kiss him at the next traffic light. By the time we attended the next class, we had started a notebook of lists. After class, we had coffee with Brian and Beth. We sent out an email asking if anyone has old baby furniture, and I know all the best thrift and consignment shops locally, Beth told us. "I'm excited, aren't you?" "We're a little nervous," Eric admitted. "We can help each other out with babysitting and respite," Brian offered. I glanced at Beth, and we read each other's minds. The guys were bonding, and we were going to be great friends as well. The licensing process took a couple of months from start to finish, and we didn't even know our license had been officially approved when Eric received a midnight call asking if it might be convenient for them to deliver our first foster child. She was supposed to go to another couple we met in our class, but they were out of town for the weekend. Eric put the placement coordinator on hold. "It's pretty inconvenient," he said to me. "We're supposed to go to my grandmother's house tomorrow." "This child has nowhere to go," I reminded him. And that was it, the start of a new way of life for us. We made up the crib and waited for our first foster child. A trembling 2.5-year-old toddler arrived wrapped in a blanket. Eric went over the paperwork with the caseworker while I unwrapped Lejana. She was wearing only a thin shirt and a bulging putrid diaper. I couldn't remove all the caked-on feces, and so I filled a bathtub with warm water. Lejana sobbed, gulped, and moaned as I cleaned her. Eric brought a bottle of warm milk upstairs and helped me dress the limp little girl. She clung to the bottle with all her might and sucked it dry. "Should we give her another one?" he asked. "I'm not sure. We can't let her go to sleep hungry." As I lowered Lejana into the crib, she punched and screamed. I know, I whispered, and tried again. This time she kicked me in the belly as she arched her back away from me. Eric reached for one of the stuffed teddies we had bought in case we got a child. Lejana pressed it to her chest with one hand and accepted the second bottle with the other. Eric helped me lower her into the crib. I dimmed the light and we tiptoed out. "Do you think she'll fall asleep?" I asked. "How am I supposed to know?" he said. "You usually get 9 months to prepare to be parents. It happened to us with one phone call." I got up several times to check our first charge, but we were really lucky because Lejana slept the rest of the night. But she woke at dawn crying inconsolably. I knew that cry, at least the feeling behind the cry. "Where's Mommy? Where's my bed, my house? How do I get back there? I want my mommy." While I held Lejana, stroking her wiry, beaded curls and silky arms, Eric read me notes from her file. "Mom has a long history of mental illness, just decompensated. Child has only eaten cigarettes and beer for last several days, perhaps longer." He gagged. "Her mother fed her cigarettes and beer. That's crazy." "That's what decompensated means," I said. She flipped out. Eric scanned the paperwork again. She's supposed to go to the Sandersons, but they are out of town for a few days. Oh, I remember him. I think he was the youth pastor who always wore a tie. Yesterday, I was worried about Lejana coming at an inconvenient time. Eric rubbed his temples. Just think, she could still be eating cigarette butts. Lejana was glued to me for the next 3 days. At first, Eric tried to cheer her by playing songs on his guitar and making funny faces, but Lejana just pressed herself into my chest. She needs to be sad, I said. They talked about children and grieving in class, Eric said. I guess this is what they meant. I sent Eric to the store for diapers, socks, a pair of sneakers, several frilly t-shirts, and long pants since it was January. She also needed pajamas, a hoodie jacket, and her own blanket. The agency provides a small clothing stipend for children when they first enter care, and we had become members of our local foster and adoptive parent association where parents often shared items, donations, and supplies. Get some Cheerios, bananas, and more milk, I said, and fresh bottles. I'm going to toss out her cruddy one. During her first bath, I had concentrated on carefully cleaning Lejana's filthy body. This morning, I tackled her beaded and braided hair, which was more of a challenge. I worked shampoo in between her cornrows as gently as I could, while holding a washcloth to her forehead to prevent the suds from stinging her eyes. After lunch, she seemed ready for a nap. Once again, she fought being put in the crib, and this time the bottle and Teddy didn't help. Okay, you win, baby, I said. I carried her downstairs and flopped on the couch. She curled into my lap. I kissed her forehead and inhaled her sweet baby smell. She clutched at the long necklace around my neck with one hand and her bottle with the other and fell asleep. I closed my eyes and rested too. I woke in about an hour. Lejana's hands had relaxed, but when I tried to roll her onto a cushion, my necklace pulled toward her. It had become entangled with her hair beads, and I could not extricate myself. I lay back and rearranged Lejana as best as I could and waited for Eric to return from running errands. The door slammed. Lejana startled awake, and her head snapped forward, pulling me along with her. What happened? Eric asked as he surveyed my twisted position. Just hurry and get my nail scissors. He looked at where her beads intersected with my necklace. We're going to have to cut her hair. That's against foster rules. Just cut my necklace. My mother made that for your birthday. She'll just have to remake it, I said as Eric snipped it into pieces and untangled it from the child's hair. After several days, we packed up Lejana to go into her intended foster home. We were just getting to know her, Eric said wistfully. We knew this was going to happen and that she's going to a good place. If none of her birth family are suitable, they are ready to adopt her. Lejana had been with us such a short time that I hadn't become attached to her. Besides, I was used to the comings and goings of foster care and was more comfortable with the process that seemed cruel to Eric, who was born and raised in the same home by parents who were still married and in love. While I understood the rules, goals, and purpose of fostering, I now wondered if Eric was going to suffer because he loves and attaches so easily. And that is where we will stop for today at the page break in the middle of page 125. We're in the middle of chapter 9. So that's where we will pick up next time. I hope you enjoyed this section. 3 more words. Happy New Year, 2024. See you next time. Bye.